Hello, worldly crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games. Welcome back to Making Games. We are doing our fancy wizard game, GameMaker. Just a bit of a forewarning. It is now the month of May, which means that it is now officially allergy season. So if it sounds like my face is melting off as I talk, that's because it probably is. So, last time, a bunch of things related to 3D collision objects were dealt with. So we have nicer. There's still definitely some work that can be done on the 3D collisions between the player and shapes. But we have 3D collisions between the players and shapes. These are automatically collision shapes loaded from the game's data files when they're just tied to the 3D like visual vertex buffers. So I think that's pretty nice. Last week's video ended up going, in fact, so long that I had to cut it in two because I didn't want that to be like an hour and a half for no reason. So anyway, we've got that mostly squared away. I'm going to start moving on to some fancier operations. I'd like to get player climbing done today. That's going to involve this card also, special collision shapes in the my fancy 3D model asset tool thing program. And while I was poking around right before I sat down to record this, I noticed some minor issues with the way that the grounded check works. If I were to run the game and if I were to jump on top of the block, the game would not realize that I'm standing on something, and it would not let me jump. So if I stand up like here, I can't jump. If I stand here, I can't jump. That case should be covered by like climbing anyway in the future. And there's something funny going on with the grounded check, so hopefully that won't take too long to sort out. That is the step event. Did this break? Okay, as to the card up here, this card isn't actually about the bug, but it is saying that we can say if y is less than or equal to 0 beforehand. So if y equals 0 is hard-coded to be the ground plane. So if we are touching the ground, then we are automatically grounded. And there's no point in doing that collision check before checking if that is the case, because this will be the case probably more often than not. There will be things like probably death planes and that sort of thing to like make bottomless pits work in the game. Because I'm probably going to have a couple of those here and there and everywhere. But those will be handled differently. Might as well start off here by using a good old show the bug message. Let's see if... Okay, so we are detecting that collision there. We are simply not jumping anyway. Where is the jump verb being used? Okay, let me maximize that. Oh, okay, so that's why this needs to be replaced with self.is grounded. Because we only want to be able to jump if we are on the ground. Or rather, we want to be able to jump if we are ever like standing on something solid. Even if that solid thing is not necessarily the floor plane. Okay. Awesome. Oh. Off recording, I did update the 3D collision system. From, like the version of my 3D collision system that contains spatial hashes. That was another thing I wanted to do. Let's, I probably should not update that until like I'm finished with that series now, because what I have now works, and if I just update it every time I make a change to it, then that's going to be something I'm going to be doing fairly frequently. But I did want to get the spatial hash code in this game because I'm going to decide to use those instead of octrees. Let's see. Battleground checks when you try to jump. So something that is of interest to me is I'm going to real quick run a little A/B test between how collisions perform. Where's the profiler? Debugger. Profile is over here. looking for how collisions perform with the quad tree versus the oct tree. So if I had to like do my little test where I just run circles around this block a little bit and like jump up and down on it, I want to just see what the average frame time for the game is when I mess around with this a lot. And that actually wasn't terrible. So I've gotten that lower than it was. Still not great. This is the end step event where collisions are checked. Checking me against the collision world is taking up a lot of time. But we'll call this about a millisecond. And if I were to go into the OBJ game, change the collision world from a quad tree to a spatial hash. So a quad tree with two oct tree with two subdivisions to a spatial hash with a size of I want to say the tradition dictates that you make your spatial hash subdivisions about twice as big as the average size object in your world. I'm gonna guess that most of the objects in my world are gonna be of size between 32 and 64, so I'm gonna make the node size 100. There may be some larger ones for things like walls and buildings and stuff like that, but probably not too many. Most of the things in the world will be smaller. And if I run this again, and do that again, we will see how exactly how much faster this is to process like this. So if you'll give me a moment, I'm just gonna run that again. Alright, I think that's enough. And we have now cut the player's end step event from about a millisecond to about a quarter of a millisecond. Alright, that's nice. That's nice. This may or may not also scale better to larger, worlds with more objects in them. I'm not sure. But anyway, regardless, that's nice. I keep almost calling it a quad tree, but it's very much an oct tree. None of those are actually things that I wanted to knock off. I'm gonna archive that one. They're important and all, but I'm almost 10 minutes in and I haven't actually done any of the things that I wanted to look at. Okay, so special collision shapes. There's a few uses I have in mind for this. So the player, I talked about putting like a dummy collision shape in here so that I can control the point which the camera looks at visually instead of having to hard code it. So let me say I'm going to make this x can be 0, y can be I'll make that about halfway up the player, I think. Z can be, let's call this -16, so it's over the player's shoulder again. Will I actually be able to... Okay, so that's the point that's right on the bottom of that collision sphere. So if I might move that out a little bit more. So perhaps 24, -24. And I'm going to call this... I'm going to give this a name. I'm going to call this... Let's call it camera target with a pound sign in front of it. And I'm going to indicate that collision shapes that are not necessarily supposed to actually be for collision are going to start with a pound sign in front of it. You can think of that as a comment in code of sorts. And I'm also going to do something similar for example, the block. I'm going to have a collision shape which represents where you can climb, like the collision shape that detects when you can climb. And I'm going to call this, let's call it pound climb. And I'm going to just work out exactly where it makes sense to have this collision shape be. Alright, so we have ourselves two collision shapes for this box. One of them is going to be the box. That's going to be the size of the box. And the second one is going to be basically like a ledge that's a little bit above the box. And that is simply going to indicate where we can climb. Basically, if the player is colliding with this, and if they walk forward or jump into it or something, then they should be able to climb up. And I expect that to be most of what happens in in this video. Let's see. Let me export all of my meshes. We can save that all there. We've got some special collision shapes. And if I load that back in, and if I were to look at the 3D objects, if we iterate over the list of collision shapes, are we actually exporting the names right now? I think we are. I did update this format and okay, yes, so we are loading the collision shapes. I did update this format and fix some of the issues that I ran into it last time with off recording as well. Don't you just love it when you feel like you're gonna sneeze and then you just don't? Allergies are so great. So, before I get interrupted by that, printing out the shapes, we can see that we are loading the collision shapes. However, I'm not seeing everything that I wanted. I'm not seeing for the box shape, and I'm not seeing. Are we exporting this correctly? Okay, you know what the problem is? Is that I was using the wrong version of that of Penguin, which did not have the like the updated code that would export the correct things. Okay, so now I see that when I scroll up here in the console, I see that we have box and we have pound climb. That's going to be relevant to us. The player also is going to need something like this, but I can say if shape data.name, there's string starts with now, isn't there? So if the shape data's name starts with a pound sign, I'm just going to continue. Because that's like... Actually, would I want to continue, or would I want to just give it like a different mask? I think giving it a different mask will be the answer. Okay. We won't continue. We will set our mask. Let's see. This might be a fine time to... You know what? Can I move you? Can I move the console output over to my other screen? Hang on. New workspace. Let's drag the console output in here. Move this to my other screen. That's actually really annoying, GameMaker. I wish you would just let me do that without pain. All right, obj game. I'll define an enum down here. Enum collision masks or collision groups, I suppose. Default can be 0B. I'll give it 4 bits so far. What else do I want? There's climbable, of course. So that can be 0B0010. It's going to be the second place value. And I'm sure there will be others later. So down here, are you giving me like variable only reference once? Potentially dangerous variable. That's not declared in more than one. Why? There's nothing wrong with that feather. I don't know what Feather's complaining about there, but anyway. Switch shape data.name. So if the shape's name is climb, then the shape mask can be e collision masks dot climbable. I Do not understand why feather does not like that variable there. Otherwise, if oh, you know what? Okay, that makes sense. That was a negative sign, not an equal sign. Feather was right. Although I'm not sure if that was the error message that I would have shown, but let's see. Down here. Shape mask, and the collision group, like what we collide with, is going to be, that's only going to be relevant for things that are doing collisions, such as the player, such as enemies. All right, and I suppose it makes sense for the default arguments to now be like collision mask enums. Okay. Oh, and there's also the matter of case camera target. And I think for this, I'll have a special, come on, no collision value. So that mask will be 0 and it won't ever be anted against anything. I feel like it's easier to do this than to, like, systemically remove it from the list of collision shapes that an object has, to just set its mask to 0 so that nothing can ever collide with it. Just in case. Collision masks dot none. And I already set them right. Alright. This shouldn't change anything, so I still should be able to run the game, and the output console is appearing on my other screen now, instead of on my main one, which I like, but it surprised me when it showed up there the first time. Oh, you know what I also did? I corrected like the size versus half extents thing. When I did some penguin related fixes earlier. So I think I'm gonna have to uncorrect that here. That's just gonna be a matter of not dividing that by 2. Right. Okay. Collision sizes should be the same as they were before now. Alright, that's great. So we no longer are half the size of the box that we used to be. We're not like colliding with ghost shapes or anything like that. If I was to get rid of all this, and if I was to comment this out, then we would have like additional bits of collision geometry where they don't belong, but that's fine. How do NPCs handle collision? So we are literally just giving ourselves a sphere. Okay. So in that case, anyway, that just means that where I'm actually going to have to look for that camera-related code is going to be in the... Does the player have their own camera? The player has their own camera, so I can... Instead of setting the camera's target to self.xyz, I can say var player data. Let's call it player data. It's going to be meshes... no, what did I call it? It was obj game.meshes. My brain is not working super well today because that happens when you have allergies. It wasn't working super well to begin with, but obj game.meshes.player, I believe. Actually, I only need to like fetch this once, so I can make that static so this only happens once. We can say static player camera target shape is going to be, and GameMaker gives us a wonderful function called array find index, and this is actually the first time I'm using it because every time I want to search an array, I use array get index. But we're going to use this to search an array of player data collision shapes, and we're gonna search. Let's call it shape. We're gonna search the list of player collision shapes and return the shape. Whose name equals camera target. We can make this even more granular by just saying like that dot position. Granular is not the word I'm looking for. We can make this even more like getting the exact vector 3 representing the position, because we don't actually care about the like, you know, radius or anything like that at the shape data. And now instead of saying self.xyz, we can look towards the camera target shape.xyz. Okay. I hope that works on the first try. And it doesn't. Is that because we are returning, like, undefined? I'll actually use the debugger for this. You know why this is? I am using this function slightly wrong. This returns the index of whatever was found, not the value itself. That perhaps should have been obvious. Yeah, okay. And then I forgot. I forgot to dot position that. No, GameMaker, go away. Now we can get the camera target's XYZ, right? So we are now looking slightly over the player's shoulder. If I were to zoom in all the way, we can see that the player is slightly offset, and we are not updating the player's position in accordance with where we're actually going. Okay. I'm gonna want to add that to the player's XYZ, so okay, so instead of replacing that code, we should have been adding to it, rather. Yeah, let me try this again. This didn't work on the first try, or the second try, or even the third try, but it did work eventually. Oh, is it not player.xyz? What did I change? Alright, it's just self.xyz. Oh, it's bound to the player and not the camera. Yeah, so if we rotate the camera around, you can see the mouse cursor is tied to an invisible point over the player's shoulder, and behind them slightly. Should I have it be behind them? I should probably have it be in front of them. Okay. Let me make that slight change. Instead of having the camera target be behind the player, it should be in front of them. And now when now when I run the game and zoom in, we have, instead of the camera like circling behind the player, we're kind of like circling in front of the player. All right. Very nice. And this the actual distance may be a little bit like far. It might be a little far over the player's shoulder. I might want to make it closer to them. We'll see how that goes once I actually have something artwork like where the player is. But ooh, you know what this isn't doing? This isn't accounting for rotation. Instead of trying to work this out ourselves, we can just like let the computer do that matrix transform, or do a matrix transform anyway, and figure out where that point should be, because that sounds a lot less painful than actually like me trying to actually do math, because math is hard. And that function is going to still return an array. Is that a position vector 3? Can I like use a... Alright, there we go. See how much easier that was with the matrix transform? And like the best thing about this is that this will still work if we do decide to do like roll with the player, which I'm not doing, but it would work if I did. Alright. And if we want to be like fancy about it, we can also have the camera like lag behind the player. And like take a moment to catch up, but I don't know if I want to do that. That might be a little bit too fancy for what we're doing right now. This should have been several commits. Alright, hang on. Don't you just love matrix transforms? So I think we can go and check off special collision shapes. I can archive that. Yes, please. I can... Did I not have another one for the player the camera looking over the player's shoulder? Apparently I didn't. Alright, it was just that. What do I want to do next? Climbing, slopes. How long have I been recording for? 45 minutes. What is my life? Let's see. Let's start by having the player recognize when they run into something. How is that going to work? Alright, this is going to work by, in the player's begin step, we can figure out, are we colliding with a climb shape? And I'm just going to dump that at the bottom down here. We can say if, how does this work? Obj underscore game dot collision dot check object self dot c object. Then we can show debug message climbing. This itself is not really going to do anything very useful, so no, don't double run the game. So if I were to run the game once, and if I were to, how about I at least like put the console on screen like for now? If I were to run into you, the game says we're climbing, but that's not really very useful for a couple of reasons. One being that it'll happen even if like we're not moving and we're not like actually running into the wall. For another, this is not actually detecting collision with the climb object, with the object that has that mask, because our player object does not have that mask. So I think what I'm instead going to do is cheat a little bit. Say old mask is going to be self.c object dot mask. Self.c object dot mask is going to be e collision masks dot climbable. So we're just going to specifically check for when we're like touching a climbable thing, and when we're done with that, we can reset this to old mask. I'm not the biggest fan of like temporarily assigning a variable like this. Sometimes it's just the path of least resistance. Like this system, you could change the system to work so that it Alright, so we now can detect a collision with a climbing object, and I believe now we are actually going to be detecting a collision with that shape and not just like the box itself. What was I saying? Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of assigning temporary collision, temporary values like this, but sometimes it just gets the job done. You can reconfigure the system so that you could just say like collision.check object, and you can have it take a mask to check instead of just using the one that's attached to the object, and that does make me think. I think there's one thing that I'm doing wrongly. And that is that I'm going to need to actually set the group instead of because the player's group is what's actually checked against the other objects when you do collisions. This may not show a collision detection unless I jump, which actually would be closer to what I want. Oh, nope, it'll do it. All right. The question there was whether, ooh, really having a moment here, aren't you, camera? And gravity and all that. The question of, there was how tall the player's hitbox is, and if it was tall enough to get the climbing collision without being in the air. Okay. So there are a few other changes I would make to this to make this a little bit more precise. One of them might be to let me make this climbing region a little taller. For one, and your Like the X, Y, and Z, like the axes colors here are wrong. Z should be going straight up in the air. Green should be Y. But anyway, if I make this like, let's say 12 and 32 minus 6 is going to be 26. So that this box is at the top. That'll make the... Let's go 16. Let's make it half the box. This will make the... So this will make the climbing hitbox a little bit bigger, which I suspect will be a little bit friendlier. Could be too big. There's always the chance that the climbing hitbox is a little too big and people end up climbing when they don't want to, but level design should solve problems related to that, where I just adjust the height of things as necessary. So, first we're only going to actually, at least for now, we're only going to actually want to check for climbing if we have, if we are actively trying to move. So if point distance dx dy 0 is greater than 0. So if we have moved, if our target movement is greater than 0, then we can show the debug message. This will get a lot better when I get around to doing player states, but I want to have detection for this in now. Largely because climbing is a thing that I just want to do today. I just want to work on it, but also because it's a player verb, and I want to do states a little bit later. So let's bring this back on screen. We should only now have that message popping out in the console if I'm actually moving. All right, so I'm not trying to move. When I do try to move, all right, great. So that's one change I'm going to make, and I'm also going to commit some changes. Basic climbing detection. I'm also going to set it so that this only happens if the direction of the player's movement is actually into the object in question. And there's a few ways I can do that. I think one that I'll actually do is going to be, I will add myself another collision shape. And we'll call this, was that a sphere? I wanted that to be a box. Let's try that again. Let's add a box. So this can be another collision shape, and this can be climb detection. And I'm going to make that like a rectangle that's somewhat in front of the player's face, but I guess it'll approximately be like where the nose is. That's not really the purpose of that block in this player model. That was there just so that I can see like which direction the front is. But okay, so this green cube in the player's collision object is going to represent if this thing specifically collides with anything, then we should initiate climbing. What did I call you? Climb detection. All right, so we'll go with that. Let me save my project and re-export my project. And I feel like saving takes longer than it should, considering that there's like not much in here. But anyway, unless it's trying to like export like terrain or something. Let's see. So I'm going to have to go back into the 3D object set mesh, and I'm going to have to add another exception to the list here. And I'm also realizing that it'll really be kind of convenient if I were to make all this common to, or at least the collision parts common to all game entities. So something very amusing that just happened is that I almost repeated the mistake of last week, where I tried to generalize like the 3D objects and 3D collision object and all that code to NPCs in the game world in addition to just regular 3D objects. And it went pretty much the same way that it did last time, and I reverted a bunch of changes, and we're not doing that because that's going to significantly increase the amount of code that I have to rewrite. So instead, this looks familiar, right? So we're going to search this array for the nose shape, and this is going to give us the collision shape, and unlike before, we are actually going to want to use this. So I'm going to need to go quickly remember how I went and turned the shape data into an ob with the appropriate position size and everything like that. And I'm just going to copy and paste this. I will make this an instance variable to the player soon enough. That's a lot of variables that I'm going to have to update. There is code here that could be generalized and that sort of thing. I'm going to get to that later. But first, I want to just make this work like here. So if our we're gonna detect collision with our climb shape, and oh no, we're gonna use the climb object, which is something else we're also gonna need. Bar climb object is gonna be new call object. The shape is climb shape. The reference is going to be, we don't need a reference. You know what? It doesn't hurt. Our mask is going to be 0, or if you prefer, climb collision mask stop none. And our group is going to be e collision masks dots climbable, because that's what I want to detect collisions with. All right. So we can check that. We can check that collision, and I can get rid of all this gross stuff with temporary variables that we're resetting later. And this should allow us to detect collisions with our nose. That sounds amazing. I really should have thought of something else to call that. All right, so we are not in fact detecting collisions with our nose, which also sounds amazing. I have a suspicion as why that is. All right, so the problem with the box for this was that I was forgetting to transform the box in accordance with the player's transform, and then I decided that's entirely too much work for just figuring out where we're climbing, so I turned it into another sphere instead. Here we are going to run into the same problem as I did with the this code here. Keeping it transformed appropriately. So I'm going to do basically the same thing. And player climb position XYZ like this. Our original position can be that index 0, that index 1, that index 2, because GameMaker's matrix transform vertex still only returns an array of 3 values. And I like my normal vectors. Normal vector is something very different. That should at least put it in the right place, with significantly less work than what I was going to do. Okay, so now we are appropriately detecting collision with that. My hands are off the keyboard now, so it's not showing up in the console. With that box, with the climb target. If I were to move backwards, it still would have done it briefly, which isn't what I want, because that would have been the hitbox still overlapping for a few frames before I left. So the next thing I'm going to want to do, I think, and probably the last thing I do in this video, I don't know, I was hoping to at least show myself sliding up the wall in this video going into a climbing state, but again, if I'm going to do states later, then that maybe doesn't make sense. Basically, instead of checking... Actually, I think I can break this down into two things. One, we're only going to do this if we check our up direction and not our forward direction, and not if we're moving anywhere. So if you back up or if you strafe side to side, then you shouldn't be able to climb. And also, if you're running close to a object at an angle, if you're running next to a collision object, I don't think you will initiate a climb if you do that, because this won't detect collision in that case, but I'll run it and find out. And also, something that I should do is I should actually play Chamber of Secrets a bit in this recording, so that you can actually like see what I'm talking about with respect to this. So I'm gonna go like side to side, actually. So I'm gonna like ram my face into this wall, right? If I tab out, that'll pause the console, and if I go side to side, we will not detect that we should be climbing. However, if I keep running forward into it, we will. Let's tab out to refresh the console again, or to stop the console anyway. I think that'll cover us. So if you back up, you'll like drop down, and I don't know if I want that, but I'll figure that out later. This video is going to be really underwhelming to someone who isn't like really into the logic of all this stuff, because like if I put climbing in the title, people are going to expect to see at least the character like going up the wall. But I've also been saying something about player states, and that's not going to be done today. Okay, so this is mostly good anyway. Let's go into player creative and let's save this for later. I'm going to want this. For that matter, I could do the same thing with this, like looking at the camera look position. So player data is going to be this. Player climb collision is going to be that. The player's transform is going to be irrelevant. That's only going to be useful in the begin step event. The original position is going to be that position. Original radius. This will not change. I'm not going to worry about that. Player climb collision.radius. I don't think I'll have to keep the climb shape, but I will say self.cObject_climb is going to be equal to this. And I think now I can simplify all of this to... that's going to be the player transform. I can get rid of this. And we're going to transform... I'm going to transform all this by the player matrix. And then I can get rid of this. We don't have to instantiate an object every... And that should be a successful refactor that makes this code somewhat less stupid. Alright, and I guess while I'm doing this, I'll do the same in the... Nope, you didn't like that. Why didn't you like that? Because that data doesn't know what to do with a .mul method, because it's not a real vector. It just has an XYZ. Boy, explaining this it makes... POSI, I misspelled something, didn't I? Explaining this makes it sound really dumb. Oh no, this needs to be .shape. Like, explaining all, like, why I have, like, 3 different versions of a vector 3 in this project really doesn't make any sense. That's redundant. Alright, in any case, now what I need to do that I forgot to do is going to be... Maybe it's a good thing this keeps erroring, because that makes me realize additional errors in the code. We are not successful. Okay. That should have been obvious. I need to stop soon. I don't know, I'm probably getting tired or something. So now it's in the right place. If I were to jump and move backwards, we would not do that anymore. Oh, you know what? Falling backwards will not Falling backwards will not cause the player to grab hold because, again, that'll only happen if you're moving forward. All right, that's nice. That actually solves 2 of my problems for once. And as I was saying, we can do the same thing for the for this thing. So we already have that, and instead of saying static camera target shape, I can just say something like self.camera target. And that can be a bit of a simpler expression. And we don't have to do any weirdness with getting that information every time. I think that should be good. This should be very obvious if it works or not, because camera look position will be correct or won't be correct. All right, so if I'm running in circles, camera look position is indeed correct. If I rotate around, all right, very nice. I'm going to commit this last change. And I'm going to end this off here. So this is going to be 0.14. Numbering may be a little messed up. I'll have to see if I can fix that because that got last video got chopped in half. And I'm going to end this off by playing a bit of a game. And that is going to be the game that I keep citing as this being based on. I need to go to a map that has a lot of. I think that save file will be what I'm looking for. I keep saying that Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets for the PC is the game that is largely inspiring what I'm doing.
Welcome, Harry Potter, to the Spongify Challenge.
Is the game volume playing? It is. Awesome. Alright, well, nobody cares about what Gilderoy Lockhart has to say. And he's gonna keep talking. Alright, you be quiet. Hang on, let me get rid of these enemies so that I can use this, actually. Yeah, let me get rid of these guys so I can use this as a testing arena. Alright, gnomes are not the most difficult enemies in this game, but they do get a little bit annoying in places. So we can see that if I run up to a wall, I'm just gonna climb up on it. I don't know exactly offhand how this is implemented. This is an Unreal Engine 1 game. This came out in 2002, so it's going back there a little bit. You can see that if I run up to something that's about as tall as Harry is, he's going to climb up on it. If I can find, like, a slightly... yeah, I can't really find it, like, a middle distance that's just slightly shorter than Harry to climb up on. But, that's how it works if I run into something. I can also do that while I jump, so if I hit a ledge mid-jump, then I will, like, sort of go halfway into the climbing animation and finish my climb there. Oh, that's actually a decent height. So that's a little taller than Harry, but he can still climb up it, which is nice. And of course, if I can do it, these springy tiles are very, very helpful illustrating. If you soar through the air, either from one of those or just from taking a running jump and hit something mid-jump, then you'll do it also. So there's actually other examples of this right here in the starting area that I'd like to show. So if I do a little bit of gameplay, and you're probably gonna, if you're not familiar with this game, you're probably gonna see a lot of similarities in what I'm gonna try to do, like, spell-wise in mine. So there we have a pretty clean jump. I'll do that again. So if I jump into that and climb onto the ledge, like, just barely, then Harry will go into his full climbing animation. If can I take a longer jump here? Yeah. Then he'll do the half climb, as I showed off earlier. This is a small ledge that will also warrant a I guess what I call the half climb. And I don't know if I can do it, but so if you like strafe into it in this game, he will also initiate the climb. I didn't realize that. What about going backwards? Going backwards will not. All right, so that's food for thought in the GameMaker project. But I think that's that should give you a solid idea of what I'm trying to go with general like traversal mechanics in this game. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Vitro V, Squarecrow, Syndra Larson, Manta Ray, Harold Gidry, GameMaker, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, and Army Armbuster for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.